The castles in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 are very different from the castles in the first game, but not in the way you probably expect. I'm not talking about the amazing new locations they are found in, like the steep rocks of Trotsky Castle or the flat valley Suchtol Castle sits in. And I'm not talking about any game design choices either. The new castles actually use a completely different historic concept for their defense, and I'm going to explain to you why real castle owners in the Middle Ages had to decide between one of those two philosophies of design when building their castle. The castles in the first game all feature a large main tower. This kind of tower is very typically found in Central European castles, especially in and around Germanic regions. With historically Bohemia being part of the Holy Roman Empire, it's not surprising that German and Czech castles share a lot of common design elements. The castles of Skalitz, Talmberg, Pirkstein and Rattay all have such a tower, which is called a Bergfried in German. A Bergfried generally takes the form of a square or a round tower, which is usually around 20 to 30 meters in height. The shape of the tower mostly depended on regional preferences. For example, along the river Mosel in Germany, a castle's Bergfried is often round, while in Austria they are mostly square or rectangular. In the game, we can see that the nobility in the region between Skalitz and Rattay apparently preferred building round Bergfrieds, although the upper castle in Rattay features a square one. Round towers have some structural benefits, since corners can be weak points, but the design also provides less usable space within the tower. A typical Bergfried, such as the one found in Talmberg Castle, has a lot of very well thought out defensive features. In order to prevent any attackers from easily getting into the Bergfried, its entrance is always raised off the ground and can only be reached with the help of a ladder or semi-permanent wooden stairs, which can easily be dismantled during times of danger. A heavy wooden door secured by strong locking beams protects the small entryway. The Bergfried's completely windowless ground floor is usually vaulted for structural integrity and only accessible via a hatch in the ceiling from the floor above. This vaulted room is often much higher and has thicker walls than the upper levels of the tower, providing a really strong and secure base for the Bergfried. Since it's impossible to get out of this room without the help of a rope or ladder, it was sometimes used as a dungeon for prisoners. Except maybe on the topmost floor, a Bergfried doesn't have any larger windows and only features narrow slits in the wall to let some light and fresh air inside the tower. Those openings may look similar to an arrow loop, but don't have enough room behind them to be used for defense. Since they are found in rather high elevations, those small slots don't have any usable angle of fire. The actual defensive strategy of a Bergfried concentrates on its top floor, which is used as a secure fighting platform. Today, castle towers are mostly depicted with classic crenellations. However, a lot of historical towers instead featured wooden battlements, just like the ones shown in Kingdom Come Deliverance. Since they completely enclose the battlements, they have the advantage of better protecting the defenders from bolts and arrows. They also extrude out in front of the wall and leave gaps in the floor, which give the defenders the ability to shoot straight down and see attackers close to the tower, without having to lean out and expose themselves to enemy projectiles. The Bergfried is fundamentally a fortified building that completely focuses on defense. It served as a safe retreat for the castle's inhabitants in case of a siege, and provided a second line of defense if the castle's wall was breached. Its height made the defenders more effective, while being at the same time very hard to reach. Kinetic weapons, such as bows and crossbows, can shoot much further from an elevated position, and their projectiles develop more force on target. Stones are also much more devastating when thrown from such a high position as well. The soldiers on a Bergfried could control the area around it and secure strategically important points within the castle. This is especially useful if placed near weak spots, such as the gate or the side of the castle where it can be most easily attacked from. As the highest point of the castle, the Bergfried naturally also served as a lookout tower, as a good all-around view was possible from here. So-called Türmer, meaning tower watchmen in German, were employed on top of it, whose job it was to observe the surrounding area and recognize potential dangers such as enemy troops or outbreaks of fire at an early stage. From these vantage points, they could also monitor the trade routes and bridges that were often located near castles, and thus enforce any tariffs claimed by the lord of the castle. Since the Bergfried was solely dedicated to military functions, castles required a separate building for residential purposes. In Germanic castles, this role was fulfilled by the palace, a structure designed primarily for comfort rather than defense. The palace was either unfortified or only lightly fortified, as it was built within the protective walls of the castle. While its exterior walls facing outside the castle were strongly built and had no low-lying openings an enemy could exploit, it did not usually serve as a second line of defense against intruders who had already made it into the courtyard, leaving that role to the Bergfried. Instead, it was intended to be a practical and comfortable living space, accommodating the lord, his family, and essential household functions, making it the center of daily life within the castle. The strategy of separating military and civilian functions into two buildings allowed the Bergfried to completely concentrate on defense, while the palace could focus on comfort and daily life without creating any security risks. But this idea also had some significant drawbacks. The Bergfried was very expensive to construct and occupied valuable space within the castle, yet it did not have a lot of everyday use. Its dark and cramped interior made it unsuitable as living quarters and highly impractical for storage. Unlike the palace, which was the center of daily life in the castle, the Bergfried mainly served as a lookout during peacetime. Although keeping an eye on the surroundings of the castle is very important, having a massive tower isn't absolutely necessary for that. In general, the Bergfried is a very strong defensive structure to have in case of an attack, but a pretty unpractical building during any other time. Because of the Bergfried's massive cost and little use in daily life, some castle builders in medieval Bohemia decided that it's not worth the expense and opted to build a Wohnturm instead. Meaning residential tower, a Wohnturm is designed to combine defensive architecture with living space. In Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, a Wohnturm can be found in Suchdol Castle, Maleschow Castle and Nebakov Castle. Troski Castle even appears to have two of them on top of its steep rock formations. One especially great example of a Wohnturm is the main tower of Maleschow Castle, which we are going to look at now. To accommodate living quarters, the tower has a larger footprint, allowing for relatively spacious interiors. The upper stories often feature large, beautifully crafted windows, providing more light and ventilation, and greatly increasing the quality of life for the tower's inhabitants. The walls, while still thick for defense, are not as massive as those of a Bergfried, maximizing usable interior space. Residential towers are almost always rectangular or square, as these shapes are more practical for room layouts compared to the circular design used in some Bergfrieds. If sufficiently large, a Wohnturm can have multiple rooms on each level, instead of a singular chamber per floor. Additionally, rather than a deep dungeon accessed only by a trapdoor in the ceiling, the ground floor of a Wohnturm is usually connected via internal stairs and serves as a storage area, making it more functional for daily use. A Wohnturm, while focusing on the residential aspect, still incorporates several defensive features. It retains a tower-like shape, using height as a means of protection. The entrance is elevated above ground level and can only be reached by a ladder, or more commonly wooden stairs, which could be removed in case of an attack. To prevent intruders from climbing in, the lower floors only have small, slit-like windows that provide minimal access while still allowing in light and fresh air. The entrance itself is secured by a thick wooden door. Additionally, the topmost floor often features a fighting platform, allowing defenders to repel attackers from above, making the Wohnturm not just a residence, but also a fortified refuge. In the case of Maleschow Castle, the top level of the tower is comprised of a strong, half-timbered construction, extending over the tower on all sides. The large room created by that can be used as regular living space in peacetime, but serves as the tower's battlements during an attack. The defenders can use its windows to shoot at the enemy with crossbows and utilize them just like they would use stone crenellations. Since this additional level extends outwards, openings in the floor would allow the defenders to see what's going on at the base of the tower and shoot straight down or throw heavy rocks. This fulfills the exact same function as the wooden hoardings that are found on the Bergfrieds of Talmberg or Pirkstein. But it's not uncommon to find a Wohnturm that doesn't feature dedicated battlements at all, since you basically only need regular windows to shoot out, and just having a strongly built tower is secure enough. We can see right at the beginning of the game that the Wohnturm of Suchdol Castle doesn't have any specialized battlements, and it's still a very strong defensive building. A Wohnturm offers several advantages over a Bergfried by combining both defensive and residential functions into a single structure. This makes it more cost effective, as it eliminates the need for separate buildings dedicated to defense and living quarters. Additionally, it conserves space within the castle complex, which can be quite limited, as only one main building is required instead of multiple. The lord of the castle and his family benefit from enhanced security, as their personal quarters are within the heavily fortified tower. Furthermore, stored supplies and valuable possessions such as expensive furniture and other important items are better protected from both attacks and theft, ensuring the castle's essential resources remain secure. While a Wohnturm is a well-balanced structure that combines both defensive and residential functions, it does not excel in either. Its defensive capabilities are weaker due to its lower height and less robust construction, making it more vulnerable to attacks. Arrows and bolts shot from a comparatively low Wohnturm don't develop as much force and can't go as far as those fired from a high Bergfried. The garrison within the tower can be more easily reached by enemy projectiles, since they are not as high up and therefore out of reach. Additionally, the presence of larger windows also creates weak points that enemies can exploit to break into the tower. In terms of comfort, living in a tower-like structure is less convenient than in a spacious palace, as residents must frequently climb stairs to the upper stories, which is impractical for daily life. The smaller usable area compared to a palace further reduces comfort and functionality. Furthermore, a Wohnturm is not as effective as a Bergfried for lookout purposes, as its lower height provides a more limited field of view. Because it's not as tall as a Bergfried, it also lacks the same imposing and intimidating presence that a castle might otherwise project. The castles in Kingdom Come Deliverance are awesome, and I really love that the developers decided to include more variety in castle designs in the second game. While the first part of the game had pretty great and realistic fortifications, I think they really brought it to a new level in Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, with the introduction of different types of castles. During medieval times, you could find hundreds of different castles scattered throughout the land of Bohemia, with some having a Bergfried and some having a Wohnturm. Both designs have different strengths and weaknesses, each providing a solution for the individual needs of a castle owner. While the Bergfried is the stronger defensive building in general, the Wohnturm offers more usability in everyday life. Each type of tower is great in its own right, which is why both concepts were used alongside each other for hundreds of years. Some castles even had both a Bergfried and a Wohnturm, so I don't think one is better than the other, and they both have their place in medieval castle architecture. If you're interested in castles, please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss my next video on medieval fortifications. If you want to know how castle walls and crenellations developed over time, you can check out my video, I will link it right here. Please consider giving this video a like, it would help me out immensely. Thank you for watching and see you soon.